Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Favor and I'm a lifestyle content creator living in Manitoba, Canada. If this is the first time here, you're definitely welcome. Please subscribe so you can join our family, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming when I post new videos. So guys, in this video we're going to be discussing buying versus renting. In a previous video I went in depth, telling you guys everything you need to know about finding accommodation in Canada. I also talked about renting and talked about buying a house, and I'm going to put the links to those videos in the description box and also in the cards above, so do well to check those videos out. What we're going to be doing in this video is comparing buying versus renting, because I've had a few people actually message me to ask me what I think about it, just to advise. So I just felt, what, I'm just going to put this video out so it would help anybody that's interested. If you want to know everything I have to say, definitely keep on watching. So guys, the first thing I'd like to say is buying a house is always a benefit, like it's an asset, right? But you also need to be careful, right? You don't want to go into debt just because you want to own a house. And it also just makes sense to mention that we should stop pressuring people, because not everybody is there yet, and people have, we all have different timelines, we all have different, phases of life. So please don't make anyone feel less of themselves just because they haven't been able to purchase a house, or because you feel like they're renting. Like, nah, you guys, we have to get away from that mentality, and we just have to allow people be them, allow them do what works for them, especially at that time of their life. Okay, so yes, buying a house is good, but it's not always a benefit. Okay, I just needed to get that out there. Another thing to pay attention to is buying a house isn't always cheaper, because I find that a lot of people talk about buying a house, they talk about the fact that, oh yeah, you're paying this amount to a landlord when you're renting, and they feel like you could pay that amount, especially if you're going to be taking out a mortgage. So they feel like you could pay a similar amount to your lender or financial institution as your mortgage, which will end up accumulating over time. So from that perspective, it makes sense, of course, right? But then, can you afford the down payment? Because buying a house isn't all about how much you can pay monthly, right? There are other costs that are associated, and we went in depth in the video where I talked about buying a house. You need to have your down payment, which could be a lot of money, like thousands of dollars, right? Closing costs, like they tell you, get your down payment, right? And so someone already calculates, okay, depending on this kind of house, I'm gonna try to save 10 to 20,000 or 30,000, depending on how much the house costs, right? And then they forget that they might need another 5 to 10,000 or even more for closing costs, right? And so it's just important that people pay attention to all these costs. Another thing about houses is that there are a lot of expenses. Utility bills are not always part of your rent, right? Whereas if you're renting, most times you might be able to find an apartment where they cover all the utility costs, where they cover most of your utility costs, right? But if you buy a house, that's strictly on you. With buying a house, it doesn't just end at those big expenses, right? There are unexpected expenses that come up, and the thing about these unexpected expenses is just that you can't say, right? You can't forecast, especially if you're not going to be buying a brand new house. I feel like it's different when you're buying a brand new house, because most times everything is good, everything is brand new, and most of those things or appliances come with warranty, right? So if something packs up, you're able to contact the company or the store where you purchased the item from, and most times be able to get a replacement, or they could easily fix it, right? But if you're buying a house when it's not brand new, for example, you don't know how long the appliances have been alive for. I'm gonna use that word, right? And so you could buy a house, and next thing, your AC isn't working, the furnace isn't working, or say your stove, or the fridge, anything can go wrong. And all these things cost a lot of money. To replace a stove, depending on the kind of stove you want, could cost as much as let's just say $800 up, right? That's already a bulk expense. And that's the thing about houses, right? Most times when things would I say get bad, or when you need to replace things, sometimes it doesn't just cost a little amount of money, right? I mean, if your fridge should stop working, you might need to spend up to $1,000 to get people to come and take a look at all these things, or to get people to come and service some of these appliances costs you so much money as well. Sometimes to get, say, your plumber to come see your house, they could charge you about $200 just to come, right? They haven't even fixed anything, they haven't told you what is involved, they haven't told you what's wrong. Just for them to come, you probably have to pay them say $100, $200, and I'm just okay. So you might be able to afford a house, good enough, but do you have room to cover any additional cost that comes up, right? I think that's what people need to think about, because sometimes this additional cost could cost a lot of money, right? So you always need to have that at the back of your mind. You need to brace yourself for that. Another thing is the weather. So you live in Canada and you know that there's always going to be snow. When you own a house, or if you rent a house, because most times, it applies to people that rent houses, not just people that own a house. But once you live in a house, most times you're expected to clear the snow on the driveway. Okay, I mean, if you don't clear it, then how are you going to get out, or how are you going to be able to go to work and all of that, right? So that's something that you have to deal with. Whereas if you lived in an apartment, you probably don't have to ever worry about that. Like, most times that's for your landlord or caretaker to worry about, not you. And of course, like, that's convenient, not having to go out in the cold to pack snow. Like, you guys, I don't know, I feel like when you live in Canada and you have to experience this life, I feel like you'll be in a better position to understand, because it's just me talking now, right? But if you don't live here, you probably don't understand, right? But I mean, like, the cold, the weather, like, it doesn't just help, right? Another thing that homeowners need to worry about is, like, mowing the lawn. Like, you have to cut the grass, you have to keep it low, you have to keep it nice. And I've heard that the city finds people that don't do that. So you really don't want to attract unnecessary expenses to yourself, right? So yeah, that's something you have to worry about. And we're talking about all these things, like clearing the snow, mowing the lawn. It just makes sense that you have to purchase the proper tools and appliances required. And that just means that you're going to be spending more money, because if you didn't own a shovel before, then you have to buy a shovel to be able to clear the snow. And some people go ahead to buy snow blowers just because it's more convenient, especially if you have a larger, or would I say, driveway. So these are additional expenses that we're already discussing, right? If you didn't own a lawnmower before, you probably would own one, or maybe consider getting something that you can use to cut the grass. So these are, again, additional expenses that homeowners have to deal with, right? So you just need to always remember that it's not always cheaper, right? On the long run, yes, sometimes it might work out for some people, but not everybody. And another thing to consider is, right now it might not make sense, right? But don't put pressure on yourself, and don't let people make you feel bad because you're not buying a house right now and you're maybe paying a certain amount in rent. Of course, you don't want to be wasteful, but you also need to do what works for you at that time of your life. Okay, another thing to consider is, if something spoils in your house, right, when you live in an apartment, all you need to do is phone your caretaker, and then someone would come and fix that thing or replace that thing. But if you live in a house, that's on you, really. Again, more expensive. And for me, it just means, really take your time, think about it. Are you ready? If you live alone, can you deal with all these additional expenses? Are you able to, clear the snow? Okay, you guys, I don't know, but I don't like cold. I don't like cold. I know I live in Canada, but if I don't have to be outside, like, you won't catch me outside. And so that's something that you really, really need to think about. Like, you need to brace yourself if you feel like this is the direction you want to be taking or following. Okay, one thing I would say is, if you're a new immigrant in Canada, I don't advise buying a house, just because there's so many things that could be attached to buying a house, especially if you're not buying a house brand new. Again, if you're able to, like, if you have the capacity to, by all means, go for it. It's okay, it's nice, it's not bad. But if you're new in Canada, I wouldn't really advise you to buy a house, just because you're still new. It's nice for you to survey the environment, get used to neighborhoods, and pick what works better for you. So that's what I would say. However, do what works for you. Okay, like, do what's best for you at that time of your life. Okay, like, I'm not going to tell you buy a house or don't buy a house. So yeah, I guess the last thing that I would say is, with a house, most times you have more space, you have more privacy. And so that's something that a lot of people also look forward to having, by buying a house. But I feel like the thing for me is, owning a house isn't always cheaper. Like, it's not always a benefit. And so if it doesn't work for you at that moment, just take it easy. Okay, everybody's time would come. Okay, just be patient, give yourself time, and don't let anybody pressure you for no reason. Because if you're not ready and you decide to go into it, it might end up just stressing you out more, or making you go into debt, and we really don't want that. Okay, so take your time and make what decision works better for you. If you have any questions, I'll be in the comment section to reply, or you can go ahead to send me a DM. And yeah, that'll be all for this video, guys. I'll see you in my next video, but until then, stay safe and stay blessed. Bye.